Hello, friends. How are you? I want to welcome you guys to another edition of the Lovecast. You are listening to episode 126, which is titled What You Work For, You Will Never Have, Part 1. Let me repeat that. You're listening to episode 126, which is titled What You Work For, You Will Never Have, Part 1. And maybe some of you might be watching this live on Facebook. I'm experimenting a little bit. I've been taking the Lovecast, which gets published typically, on your podcast platforms every Tuesday or so. Sometimes, yeah, usually Tuesdays. But I'm going to be experimenting on going live first here on Facebook the Lovecast with Jamal, and also my coaching page, Free to Love coaching page, probably a day in advance, and then of course the audio portion will get published to the podcast platform normally, like it typically does. So you might be watching this via video on my Facebook page called The Lovecast with Jamal. It's the Facebook page for this podcast. So if you haven't checked that out, I would encourage you to to go there and like that page, and you'll be able to, if you'd like to watch podcasts as opposed to just listen to them in audio, you can do that there. Also, I have a YouTube channel, which I don't really use very often. It doesn't get a lot of traction. I just haven't really emphasized that, but I'm going to start posting things there just for the future. So if you would like to watch the Lovecast as opposed to just listen to it, you can go there to my Facebook channel and watch it there. But welcome back. I'm really excited. I'm starting a new series here on the Lovecast. It's going to be a few part series. Not exactly sure how many parts to this. Definitely be several parts. But yeah, I want to talk about why you should never work for anything. Okay, because whatever you work for, you will never have. Yeah, and I've learned this the hard way. I've worked for a lot of things, and the things that I work for, I never end up getting. Okay. I want to talk about why that is. So I've learned it's just more important to not work for things. I'll explain that. I'll unpack that here in a little bit. But anyway, before I get into the meat of what this podcast is about, I would like to talk to you guys specifically. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to the listeners who have been listening to the episodes. I've been hearing from you guys. Thank you. I always enjoy hearing from listeners who let me know that they're listening to the podcast and that they're enjoying it. And also that they're, just the feedback, things you're learning, even some pushback, things you disagree with that I may share. It's always a good idea to communicate that, I think, because I think through that communication, there's a potential for understanding. So, there's when I listen to somebody share maybe some concepts or ideas that may be different than what what I've been conditioned by or taught previously. One of the things I try to do, especially if I'm listening to new material, if I'm reading a book, listening to a book, listening to a teaching somewhere, one of the things that I do is I try to what I do is I turn off the part of my brain that evaluates everything from the place of right or wrong, truth or non-truth, agreement or disagreement. These are all the same kind of vantage points, right? Truth or non-truth, agreement or disagreement, because our mind is kind of going, do I agree with that? Is that true? Oh, I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know if that's true. So we're always evaluating what we know to be true, right? We're always evaluating that. What we know to be, do we agree with this? Do we not agree with this? Well, that is a toxic mindset when you're trying to evolve or learn. Yeah, it's toxic. There's time for that later. But when you're listening to something, what I like to do is like to say, okay, this is not about me agreeing or disagreeing with what the person is saying. First and foremost, it's about understanding what they're saying. Do I understand? That's key here. Do we understand what the person is talking about? Because if you understand what the person, if you can understand where they're coming from, and to the point where you can actually repeat back to them, what they're saying and they would agree with it, they go, yeah, you've heard me correctly, then you're successful. So always first like to listen to understand what the person is saying. And then it's very natural that we understand, okay, yeah, I'm not sure if I jive with that. I don't think I don't agree with that. Or we may come to a conclusion. We go, yeah, that really accurately, that resonates with me. I would agree with that. That's very natural. That comes secondary. First and foremost, though, you want to listen to understand. Okay, so I would invite you to listen to this podcast, this episode, all the episodes here, from a place of trying to understand where I'm coming from, understand what I'm communicating first and foremost, not whether you agree or not. Just so you can, because if you're listening, some people honestly listen to disagree. And I'm sure if you've been in conversations with people about anything of substance, you've met people where they already disagree. It doesn't even matter what you say. They've determined to disagree with you. It's just that they're listening to why they disagree with you. And so I actually have had people write reviews about my book. They already had made up their mind that they were going to disagree with it. And so they read things for the express purpose of coming up with reasons why they were going to disagree. And then they came up with those reasons. So they were listening to disagree, which acts as a filter to filter out anything they might possibly actually benefit from. It's the same thing. If you listen only to agree, then you may not hear the full picture of what's being communicated. So you may not even, be aware of some things you don't agree with. Okay. So you shouldn't listen to agree or to disagree, but to understand. If you can listen to understand, things become clear. So enough about that. I just wanted to say that. I want to talk a little bit today. Okay. I want to talk a little bit today about why I have learned personally in my life that whatever I work for escapes me. Yeah, whatever I work for, it escapes me. So, why is that? And the more you work for something, the more it will continue to escape you. So this is part one of this series. What you work for, you will never have, part one. This one is going to be all about healthcare. Yeah, healthcare. I just want to talk about healthcare for a little bit. Don't tune me out here because this affects you personally. I've made some decisions in my life. If you've read my book, Living for a Living, which came out, I believe, a couple years ago. When did it come out? 2019? Yeah, a year ago. So April 15th of 2019, this book came out. And in my book, Living for a Living, which you can get on Amazon. If you haven't got a copy of that, I would encourage you to get a copy. I am biased, but I am a strong believer in the message of that book. I believe it's very transformative and can alter the trajectory of your life. But one of the things I talk about in that book is I was raised to really value. So, I come from a family that has a long history of struggle, especially financially. My dad grew up overseas in a very poor country. And my mom was from a part of Ohio that was, a lot of struggles, a lot economically, just part of the state and the country that struggles, and very blue collar and that kind of thing. And I inherited a lot of paradigms, a lot of mindsets. And one of the things I inherited pretty quickly is that it's good to work for things. Now, I know you might be saying, yeah, that we all have been trained that way. Isn't that true? It's actually not true. It's not true. But I was trained, just like you probably have, to work for things. So, for example, I heard really early on that certain jobs were better than other jobs because some jobs paid more money, right? And some jobs had better benefits than other jobs. So we were trained to look for jobs that paid more and had good benefits. And if you found that job, you were considered blessed or lucky, fortunate. And you wanted to hang on to those jobs, especially if they had good benefits, especially if they had good, good pay structure or a lot of stability. If it was a good company, you were considered fortunate and blessed to have those jobs. And sometimes those jobs were hard to come by. So I was raised to believe that and to live that way. And that's the way society works. Right. And I remember my mother, actually, she got a job. I was about 5 or 6 years old, and she decided to go back to work just for the extra income. She got a job with the state. So it was a state of Ohio job, and it paid a lot of money. Back then, it was good. It was considered a good paying job, and obviously the state job, a government job, you got good benefits. So our family got good health benefits, and my dad also worked for the state at that time, so they both were working for the state of Ohio, and good government jobs, made steady paychecks, good benefits, right? The only problem with that is that my mom hated her job. She really didn't like it. I mean, it was not. It just. I mean, it was. She just stuck in a cubicle. Had a list of things that she had to do, and she did good. She was a good worker, good hard worker. She did well, very loyal, very consistent, very reliable employee. But she just didn't like her job. But she did it. She worked there every day. And when I say my mom didn't like her job, I mean, I didn't hear her complain about it. She didn't call off work and not go to work. She went to work faithfully, consistently every day. So it wasn't like, it wasn't this thing where, she just didn't have a good work ethic or anything like that. No, she loved to work. I mean, she was raised to work and to have a great work ethic, and to work really hard. And she did. But my mom, when I say my mom didn't like her job, it's an understatement, because let me tell you how much my mom did not like her job. You want to know how much she didn't like her job? She hated her job so bad that when she would wake up in the morning, she would vomit. Some days she'd be so nauseated, she would just throw up. Can you imagine? Like going into work, just dreading the day because she just didn't like it. So she went in and she just would throw up. She would be that physically, her body was just revolting, but she pushed through it. She went to work every day, came home, she'd go to work early and come home in the evening and, does what millions of hardworking Americans do every day, and, it's interesting. It's really, really interesting. And I took note of that at an early age. And I asked my mom one time, I just said, why do you do this? Why do you work every day? Why do you go to work for a job every day that you hate? And she just said, well, what else are we going to do? We need the money. This is how we live. And the benefits are just too good. Pays really well. And the benefits are good. We have health insurance for the whole family. It's a reliable job. Jobs are hard to come by. This is a blessing to have. Yeah. So she did that for, I would say, 30 years, over 30 years. She retired from that job and she got a pension from that job. And it took care of our family, provided for us. I'm thankful for the provision that job brought in. But I made a decision pretty early on in my life. When I saw that, I made a decision pretty early on. Guess what that decision was? Yeah. I will never do that. That's not a knock on my mom. I applaud her. I have a lot of respect for her, but I don't want to live. I don't want to live in such a way that I have to tolerate my job because it pays good enough or the benefits are good enough, right? I don't want to do that. I made a decision early on that I was not going to live my life basically hating my existence, hating every day of my life just because it paid good enough or the benefits were good enough. Okay. That was a decision I made early on. Then fast forward, of course. So if you read the book, Living for a Living, I kind of unpack my story over the course of the book a little bit. But eventually, I grew up and I was, I did what everybody else is expected to do, and I ended up getting, guess what? I ended up working for the state of Ohio, a government job. I ended up working for the state, just like my parents. Pretty soon after high school, it's about 19 years old, I got hired as a corrections officer in a state penitentiary. Yeah, I became a prison guard, right? Why? Why did I do that? Because did I want to go into law enforcement and to be a prison guard? Did I ever imagine, as a child, imagine doing that? No, not at all. That was never never on the books, but I needed a job that paid well because at that point in time I had been indoctrinated, okay, with the message of society. It's all about survival. It's all about doing, taking care of your family and doing what you need to do. And I'd gotten married very young, had a daughter very young, and I just was told this is what you do. So I did. My dad had a connection with somebody who worked for the state that pulled some strings, and most people who got a job in the prison, were older and had degrees in criminology and were going into law enforcement and that kind of thing. And that was not me. I was 19 years old, fresh out of high school, no college at that time, and I got an interview and got hired. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, I was a corrections officer, way over my head. Had no idea what I was doing. Had no idea what I was getting into. So I worked there. I worked literally in a prison, and I learned a lot at that job. I worked there for almost 5 years, 4.5, 5 years. And in that job, I learned a lot about people. It was great. I look back on it. I can totally see how this was for me and to help train me and get me into the line of work that I'm here to do in the world. But I hated the job. I hated it with a passion. Actually, the longer I worked there, I started to feel like my mom. You know how my mom was nauseated going into work every day? That's how I felt. I actually felt like I was in prison, literally. I mean, I was literally in prison. I said, I'm going to prison every day. I'm working 8 hours so I always tell inmates when I would be working in there, I'd say, hey, you guys, you're sentenced for a crime and you're doing 5 to 10 years or whatever it is you're doing. But I'm doing, some people in here are doing life 8 hours at a time and installments. And what a picture that is for how we're trained, we're brainwashed to literally live a life of imprisonment, doing things that we have no desire to do simply because we have to. We're told we have to do it. Yeah, you trade your life for freedom, or you trade your freedom for survival. That's what I should say. And that's what I was doing. I was literally putting myself in prison 8 hours a day for a paycheck, for money, for benefits. It was this, and then my parents and family members and folks were like, "Hey, you got a great job. You got a state job. It's with the state. It pays well. It's because we're taught growing up to be an employee. That's what we do, and you find the best employer and you just be a good employee." But my spirit inside was revolting. I was like, man, I watched my mom do this. Do I want to spend the next 30 years, 40 years of my life in prison? Literally. 8 hours a day just for a paycheck and benefits and health benefits? And the answer was no. So guess one of the best decisions I ever made. Guess what it was? It was to quit that job. Yeah, it was to quit that job. And guess what? I did. I quit that job. I walked away from it after about 5 years. And people were upset with me. They thought I was, I lost my mind. I made a huge mistake. Like, people kill for those kind of jobs and you just walk away from it. I did. And I chose to go a different path, and to move into a different career choice that I at the time had thought that was more aligned with my passions. And that's a good choice. Anytime you make a career choice that aligns with your passions, you're moving in the right direction with your desires. But I had to go against the grain. All these people in my life that were well-meaning, concerned, they were like, "What are you doing? Like, you're throwing away security." And and to them, that was crazy. You're throwing away security. And to me, I was like, no, I'm gaining my life. I'm not going to, a life lived in prison is not a life. It's not a living. It's survival. Right. So anyway, that was one of the best decisions I ever made, was to quit that job. That doesn't mean I regret having it. It just means I'm so glad I'm not there now. And I'm so glad, because I know people who will literally retire because the pay is just too good. The benefits are just too good, right? So that happened, all right? That happened. But I want to talk more specifically about another thing I chose to do. Several years later, okay? Several years later, I had a job that paid my family's health insurance. Yeah. It covered, one of the perks of that job is that it covered my family's health insurance. So we had health insurance. And I was at a point at that point in my career where I needed to move forward. And I knew that for me to be a healthy individual, I'm not going to get into the details of what that job was, but for me to be a healthy individual, I knew I needed to move forward in my life, and I needed to let go of that job that was holding me back. But the only problem was, was that it provided for my family's health. My entire family had health coverage because of that job. And if I were to walk away from that job, I would have no health insurance. Yeah, I was still working at that point, at that job, for the benefits. I was working for the health benefits, for the insurance. Yeah. Why? Because God forbid, what happens if you get sick, right? What happens if you have some medical issue? If you don't have health insurance, how are you going to take care of that for yourself or your family, right? Right. So I was working for healthcare. Yeah. But guess what I did? Yeah, I quit. I quit that job too. One of the best. So I quit this job too. So I quit a second job. This was many years later, that had great health benefits. And I walked away from it. Yeah. That means I didn't have that health. I lost health care coverage for myself and my family because of that decision. Isn't that crazy? It's the best decision I ever made. It's the best. Let me repeat that. It was the best decision I ever made. Let me tell you why. Because speaking of healthcare, one of the greatest things, and this is a cumulative, didn't happen overnight, and I'm still in a process of transformation in this area. But one of the best decisions I ever made for my health was to lose health insurance. Yeah. Let me say that again. One of the best decisions I ever made for my health was to lose health insurance. Isn't that crazy? Let me tell you why. Because I was working for an illusion of healthcare. And let me tell you what that was. When you get sick, well, what have we been trained to do? Yeah, you get sick. You're like, oh, I don't feel so well. Let me make a doctor's appointment. That's what we do, right? When I was a kid, I'd get sick. My parents would make a doctor's appointment, take us to the doctor. Doctor would look at you, listen to your heart, take your temperature. Maybe you had a little temperature, you had a cold, ear infection, something. You'd pull out the prescription pad and write on the pad the medicine that you need, hand it to my parents. They'd go to the pharmacy, pick up the medicine, and then we'd take the medicine. And it worked. Or so we thought. It was all right. It was okay. That's kind of what we're trained to do, So that's what I was doing. We do the same thing, right? So why do we have health insurance? God forbid we need to go to the doctors. Yeah. Fork out, we don't have to fork out all that money. The insurance will cover it. And if we need some, medication or whatever, yeah, they give it to us. That's typically how it works. But when you lose your health insurance, and at that time, now I know there's more subsidization of that with government programs. And so you can get, health insurance now pretty easily and accessible. It's more accessible. That's a good thing. But this isn't about that. I want to tell you that one of the best decisions I ever made was to lose my health insurance. And the reason for that is because my plan B, that was always plan B in my mind. If I get sick, I'll call the doctor and I'll get the doctor to fix me or my family or whatever. That's plan B. That was always there. I always had that insurance policy in my pocket. Had a little policy in my pocket where I could just go, yeah, I'll just go to the doctor. They'll figure it out. But after I lost my health insurance, I had a crisis. And the crisis that I had, the thought I had was, oh no, what will I do if I have to go to the doctor? It's like, we have to shell out that money. You'll just have to pay all that money, right? So immediately I thought, was like, well, that's not really an option for me. I'm not going to do that. So what are my other options? Well, the only option that seemed logical to me was, well, I should focus on my health. All right. Instead of worrying about the worst case scenario of what happened if I get sick, I need to start thinking about what my best case scenario is. Like, how do I stay healthy? How do I maintain health? So I started it became at a point where I'm like, oh, I have health right now. I don't want to lose it because I have it. Now, again, so I don't recommend us working from a place where we're afraid of losing what we have, but I recognize what I had. Oh, I actually have health. So it's in my best interest to maintain my health, right? So that I don't have to go and pay these exorbitant prices at, a doctor's office if I don't have to, unless it's like emergency, like, life or death situation, like, you get in an accident, have some heart attack, whatever. That's a little different. Yeah. But as far as daily health care goes, I had to actually kind of move away from the whole typical, what they call allopathic medicine, which is where you just get checkups and take medication if you have problems. I had to really look at what it meant to be healthy and what does my body need. And that sent me down a path. It took many, many, many years, and I'm still on that path of becoming very conscious and aware of what my body needs, right? I always tell people, like, it's political season, right? So we're all talking about elections, and politicians love to talk about healthcare and access to healthcare. But please don't let the language confuse you, right? Don't let the language confuse you. It's not healthcare they're talking about. It's sick care. It's not healthcare. It has nothing to do with health. It's about, what do you do when you get sick? Who's going to pay for it when you get sick? Because what we call healthcare in the United States is not healthcare. It's sick care. Right. Western medicine, by and large. Now, again, I know I'm using a, please, I know there's going to be pushback. People are going to say, well, my doctor does this and that. Yeah, I know that this is not a one size fit all kind of metaphor here, but when I speak of Western medicine, by and large, Western trained doctors are trained specifically to treat problems, treat the issues, the symptoms of the problems. That's kind of what they do. They treat the problem. They give you a drug, a pill, a treatment, a surgery to treat a symptom, but they don't really have the capability or know-how or even training to get to the root of the problem. Because again, it's not about making you healthy, it's about addressing the problem. So if whatever your focus is, that's what your focus is going to be. If your focus is on sickness and disease, and that's what your focus is going to be, sickness and disease. If your focus is on health, then that's what you're going to do. You're going to promote health. But physicians and the medical practice in the West, by and large, does not focus on health because they're not aware of what health is. They're simply aware of diseases. I mean, this is precisely why in this season of pandemic, how many of the experts have emphasized health? None that you see in the media. Like our government physicians and the folks that on the media that are coming out and talking about, this virus and all that kind of thing. How many of them are talking about promoting health? None. They're talking about, vaccines and wait for it and hide in your basement or whatever they're talking about, stay away 6 feet apart, wear a mask. I mean, that's not healthcare. It has nothing to do with health. They're not telling you how to boost your immune system. They're not telling you things you can do naturally to be healthy. That's very easy, but it's not that they're incompetent or it's not that they're malicious. It's just that they're just a product of their education, which is just all about disease management. But disease management will never lead you into health. But most of us are running and looking to that system and apparatus for health. Okay. I can say a lot more about that, but you see where I'm going with this. Okay. So the best decision I made was to actually quit my job that provided healthcare. And now I had to start saying, hey, I got health right now. I'd like to maintain that and even cultivate it. What a novel thought. And I realized I actually have access to universal healthcare right now. I actually realized that. I still feel that way. So people who don't have health insurance, they feel like, they feel naked. They're like, I don't have what I need. That's just because you've been trained to feel that way. But what do you have? You have life and you have health. So I was working for healthcare insurance, right? Because I wanted to have a safety net of that I would always be healthy or have access to health because that's what I was trained. But then when I lost that, I got to the point where I was like, actually, I have it right now. So if you're listening to this, if you're watching or listening to this podcast at this point in time, are you not alive? Do you not have life in your body? Of course you do. I mean, you might not have everything working correctly in your body, but how many things are actually working well right now? I guarantee you a lot more than that's not working well. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be alive. It takes a whole lot of things happening exactly right in your body at any given moment to keep you alive, and it's happening right now. So if you can be focused on your health and cultivate what are the things that you need to promote good health, things like diet, right? Things like good mental, spiritual health. I mean, if there is one thing that is the bedrock of good physical health, it's having a good emotional, spiritual life. You won't get that going to a doctor. They will not tell you that. The role that emotionally disturbed people, like emotionally, energetically disturbed people tend to have a lot of health issues. There's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. Yeah, because energy, your body is 100% energy. 100% energy. Did you know that? So if you have energetic disturbances in your body, guess what? Yeah, your body's going to be affected by that. They don't tell you that when you go to the doctor because they don't understand that connection, the mind-body connection, the spiritual body connection, huge connection. We're spiritual, emotional, physical beings, right? We're just trying to fix everything with pills and maybe even supplements, which are not bad. But if the root of the problem is energetic, then you got to treat it at the energetic level. And yes, you may need physical. I'm not against taking medicines and medications and going to the doctor. Please don't hear me. I'm not against that. But you have to become you. You can't outsource this. You have to become an expert at your own health. You can't farm this out and ship this out to somebody else. So the best thing I ever did for my health was to lose health insurance. It's not a joke. It's not hyperbole. The best thing that ever happened to my health was I lost health insurance. So I had to take my health in my own hands. I had to actually care about my body and start going in the direction of what does my body need? What would promote health and lead to a healthy life? So again, universal health care, you have it. You actually have it. And I know there will be pushback from this. Again, this is not a message that's so what the point I'm making here is that whatever you work for, you will never have. I was much sicker in those days when I did have health insurance. I was much sicker when I did have health insurance. It's the truth. And, I've had a few health issues over the years. That's part of being alive and growing older and having issues. But by and large, I feel really good in my body today. And it's a result of just focusing on what I have. So when I say whatever you work for, you will never have, that's true. So I always say, don't work for what you want. For example, don't work for healthcare, work from healthcare. So I work now. I have work I do in the world. I earn a living. Yes. I earn money, but I work from health, not for it. Does that make sense? I work from health, not for it. My job that I have right now is not for the money. It's not for the benefits. It's not for the benefit. It's people say, why do you do coaching? Does it pay well? Like, it's not, I don't do it for the money. Yes. I mean, it pays, but it's that's part of the exchange that allows me to do my work in the world, but it's not for the money or the benefits. I do it because it's who I am, because it's my passion. So don't work for health, work from health. Yeah. 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 My mother's had a lot of health issues. I don't want to get into a lot of her health issues. She had a lot of health issues over the years because, yeah, she had good health insurance for sure. She had great health insurance, great job. But because of the misery, the energetic misery that was going on in her body for all those years, yeah, she suffered. Her body took a toll. Stress will take a toll on us, guys. So you might have good health insurance, but you may not have health. Yeah, you may not have health. A lot of people have health insurance. They don't have health. The real question is not, do you have health insurance? The question is, do you have health? Don't work. You can't work for health. You can only work from health. You have health. It needs to be cultivated. You cultivate what you have, but what you don't have, you chase, and what you chase, you will never have. Does this make sense? What you chase, you will never have, but what you have, you can cultivate. So, what you work for, you will never have. Part 1, healthcare. Don't work for healthcare. Work from it. Okay. I know there's a lot more that could be said about this. There's a lot more that could be said about this. Let me encourage you. If anything I've said here in this podcast has made sense to you, let me encourage you to get a copy of my book called Living for a Living. You can find that on Amazon. It's available in paperback. It's also available in Kindle as a digital book. It's also available in audible.com as an audio book, so you can listen to it. That's how I prefer to actually read my books, quote unquote, these days, is actually through listening audio. So I get most of my books on audio on audible.com. But yeah, you can, I narrate it, so you can listen to Living for a Living on Audible. And I would encourage you to listen to that. And just, if this makes sense to you, would love to keep that conversation going. But let me know. Send me an email, jamal@jamaljavanji.com. Let me know your thoughts about this, pushbacks. Again, this is a smaller conversation to a much wider conversation. Again, we're going to keep unpacking this in the weeks ahead, not specifically about healthcare, but just about the concept of what you work for, you will never have. All right. Sometimes I like to use this analogy. Let's say you walk into a restaurant and it says free meals tomorrow, a free meal tomorrow. And there's a sign that says free meal tomorrow. When do you actually get the meal? When do you think you get it? Right? Never. Because the sign always says free meals tomorrow. Right? So it's never tomorrow. So the day you're in there, the sign says free meals tomorrow. So you come back tomorrow. And guess what? The sign still says free meals tomorrow. It's always being pushed out, right? We don't have to do that. Don't do that. Don't live that way. We don't have to. So again, that's a picture of what it looks like to chase something when we do that for healthcare. Yeah, I'm working for my healthcare, so I have good health insurance so that I can have the illusion of health care out there. Someday when I might need it, I'll have it. So we're chasing it, right? But what you chase, you will never have. What you work for, you will never have. You can work from health, but you can never work for it. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you would like to get on my mailing list, go to my website, jamaljavanji.com. Scroll to the bottom, put your email address in there, click submit. You'll get on my mailing list. All right, guys. Until next time, take care.